welcome you all to a joint PTA meeting tonight with Crescent Heights, Browns Point, and Northeast Tacoma Elementaries. It's our first one that we've done with all three schools, so we're really appreciative you guys coming out. The meeting tonight, the topics are going to be school safety and security. So I'm not going to bore you with financial reports or meeting minutes, so you can have that for your work. My name is Rita, and I'm the president of Crescent Heights PTA. Before we begin, I wanted to introduce you all to the guests that we have in the room tonight from the local schools and from the district. So thank you to everyone for coming and joining us tonight. We know that you being here is going to help us have a productive conversation, so thanks very much. So I've got a whole list here. So we have Dan Voelpel, who's the Executive Director of Communications. Miguel Villahermosa is the Director of Safety and Security. Aldridge is the Director of Planning and Construction. Lieutenant Aguirre, who oversees Tacoma Police Sector 1. Lieutenant Travis, who oversees the Tacoma police officers that work in our high schools. Nikol Stemp is the Assistant to the Superintendent. She's over there in the corner. Rita Chaudhuri is the Director of Elementary Education. She oversees the principals of Browns Point and Crescent Heights. And Nora Doyle is our Facilities Communication Coordinator. Oh, back in the back. She keeps school communities up to date on school construction projects. And we have our three elementary school principals here tonight. McGeeney is the principal for Crescent Heights. Cindy Horner is the principal at Browns Point Elementary. And Josh Zarling is here from Northeast Tacoma Elementary.
I just wanted to say my name is Toki. I'm one of the co-presidents of Browns Point PTA, and I just wanted to say thank you to Lori and to Crescent Heights for allowing all three schools to come to your meeting and the space and the opportunity to be here, so thank you very much.
I echo that, thank you. So I'm Jeannie Nist, I'm the co-president of Browns Point PTA. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. We know that this topic of school safety and security is weighing heavily on all of our minds, and we really thank the district. This is quite a show. We're so happy to have you tonight to answer all these questions. As the three local PTAs, our role here tonight is to facilitate dialogue with the district, with the school communities, and with the Tacoma Police Department, and to ensure that all of you have your questions answered about the safety of students, staff, and volunteers at our three local elementary schools.
So we know that the subjects that we're going to be talking about tonight are emotional. We ask that tonight everyone engage in thoughtful and respectful discussion as we address these topics. Parents have opportunities to submit questions to the district ahead of time, and we're going to begin by having the district address those questions. Real quickly, if you didn't grab a handout, there was some at the table where you signed in. After that, we're going to take questions from each school in a round-robin style fashion so that each school has time to raise questions that are of concern to them. So our plan tonight is to conclude by about 8 o'clock and be respectful of everybody's time. If you're not able to have your questions answered tonight, please follow up with the PTA at your school, and we'll compile a list from each school to submit back to the district again. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Voelpel to start the conversation. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much. We appreciate being invited out to talk with all of you. Nikol is over there taking good notes because we want to make sure we capture the conversation to take back for the superintendent and school board to review and make sure that they hear what the discussion is like as well. I want to thank you for sending us the questions ahead of time that were gathered from all of you and others. We answered all the questions in writing so you could have them with you, and I'd like to just go over a few of the highlights for you. On the first page, this isn't the only area of Tacoma where we're hearing safety and security concerns. We're hearing it from all across the district. So what the superintendent decided this week is that she is going to ask the school board to redirect some of our capital funds that are designated for school construction projects and put those into some safety and security upgrades. And she would like to expedite those things. So we have spoken with the Tacoma Police Department about helping us review our facilities to see what kinds of recommendations they have to improve access control at a number of our schools. And I'll let Lieutenant Travis talk more about that as the meeting goes on. But we're going to take that information, and then Morris's Department of Planning and Construction will be out getting bids for that kind of work, so that we can quickly install some video and voice buzzer systems at the schools across the district where the people coming in through the entrance aren't visible to the office staff. So that's something that the superintendent wants to get on right away. And there's some more detail here on the sheet about how that can happen. A lot of people across the country are grappling with this very same issue, if you've kept up on the national news. And there are all kinds of thoughts about what could be done to increase safety and security. But the number one thing that research shows is that in most cases of school violence, someone knew something ahead of time. And so there's a strong effort. Locally, we're working on a campaign with the police department called See Something, Say Something. And it used to be that people would maybe call the police non-emergency number or file something online or share something on social media. But now, we as a community, if you see something, you want to call 911. And the police department's made a commitment to follow up on those. We've had some high-profile local cases in the last couple of weeks where there were threats made against schools, and the police department, our great partners, promptly got on those and made arrests. So that's the number one thing that can be done. One of the questions was about our procedures for security should something occur at a school. And right now, that is lockdown. We practice lockdowns 4 times a year at each school. This school year will be the first school year that the Tacoma Police Department will have gone out and reviewed and observed a lockdown at every school in the district by the end of this school year, and provided that review and feedback to the leadership teams at each school so that they can find out what they did well and where they could improve in the future. There was a question about the security features of the new Browns Point that's being constructed. There's a wide variety of security features. The primary one for access control will be a secured access through a vestibule where people can come in and into the vestibule, but they can't get into the school unless they're buzzed in by the office staff once the staff has confirmed that they are allowed into the school. So that'll be right at the entrance to the school. There were a number of questions in here about could we keep these doors locked, or could we make access through one entrance, or building level security. And right now at the district level, there has not been any district-wide guidance to all schools that say this is how you have to arrange security at your building. Wide latitude has been given to the principal to decide, based on the configuration of their building, how they would like access control to be handled. And one of the steps that Principal Horner took just this week was to change the access to Browns Point, bringing that access in through one entry door instead of multiple locations. That's an example of how a principal can, on his or her own, make changes to the flow of traffic in a particular building. Appreciate we've got buildings that were built in 1910 and every decade leading up to the present, and so all of them have different configurations. They were built for the era of the age they were constructed, and so the features that they have are all going to be different. I think what we're hoping to gain with this latest initiative by the superintendent is to have some standardization of access control at as many schools as possible. There's a question about what level of security guards do we have at different schools. So in summary, right now, the school district contracts with the Tacoma Police Department for 5 police officers and a sergeant who, and the 5 police officers are assigned, the district has chosen to assign them 1 to each of our 5 largest comprehensive high schools. And it's not so much that they're there to crack down on kids or be there waiting for an intruder to come in. Really what they're there for is to establish relationships and trust with students and build those relationships so that when students hear about something, they feel comfortable coming to those officers and they can hear about things well in advance and head off issues before they happen. And they're doing a fabulous job, so thank you, Lieutenant Travis, for that. There's a whole section in here about lockdown procedures. You wanted to know how does a lockdown work? We have a whole frequently asked questions section on our safety and security website. The link is in here, so you can go and see that. But it varies a little bit from level to level. So a lockdown in a high school is going to be a little different than an elementary school, and so I think looking at those lockdown procedures online would be a good bet. I think that hits most of the highlights. If you would like, do you want to turn it over to questions for anyone up here, or how do you want to proceed?
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and open the floor for questions from the audience. So just for full visibility, Jeannie and Laura and I have been working pretty closely on the list of questions, and we weren't able to loop in Northeast Tacoma quite this early in the process. So we wanted to give any representative or parent from Northeast Tacoma the opportunity to ask a question first, and then we'll kind of go round robin school style so that there's equal time for people to talk. So anybody from, not to put anybody on the spot, but anybody from Northeast Tacoma want to start us off with a question? Yep. Are you waiting? Oh, someone was waving at me. Okay, so nobody from Northeast, Crescent Heights. Anybody want to be brave and step up to the mic? Right? Pretty nervous. Nobody? Okay, somebody's going. So this mic is a little finicky, so just either talk loud or talk right into it.
Okay, can you hear me? No? Did it come? All right. Yeah, I do not have a problem with people hearing me. So thanks everybody for coming out. We do appreciate it. One thing that's frustrating from a parent's perspective is the bureaucracy associated with fundraising or with securing funds to make improvements. Being a part of this community now for a while, coming through some privately funded preschools, I've seen thousands of dollars raised. So if we come with the money, it seems like then we're blocked with progress. So there's a couple non-security type issues that have been brought up, batting cages at Browns Point, things of that nature, where we have the money and the equipment and everything ready to go, and the answer is we can't make those improvements because of union workers or things of that nature. So with security being such a hot topic, I'm pretty comfortable with the fact that we could raise a significant amount of money to help fund these programs. The themes and some of the questions that I just read through seem to be funding in 2019, and I'm hoping that we can come up with a short list of things that we might be able to address right now. Reversing the locks on the door from an outside locking key procedure to an inside locking key procedure is something that I know we could get funded by probably the end of the night. So as we look at this, I hope we evaluate some of the short-term things that we can do and what actions can we as parents do to try to help and not just be complaining and raising issues, but actually get involved to make progress. Thanks.
That was Crescent Heights. Browns Point.
Are they going to answer it?
Yes, so I would say two things. I'll take down the question about the fundraising. I haven't heard that there was an issue with that before, so I'm not sure what specific projects there were, if it was the batting cages you were talking about, but I can find out about that. As far as the safety and security, yes, the superintendent does want to expedite the short-term solutions for things like access control, She did mention that it's not just your school up here that has those locks. We have several schools across the district that have that same issue. It must have been something from a certain era. Morris might know more about that than I do, but
They've been around forever.
yeah. So those are short-term things that she wants to expedite. There are some longer-term safety and security things that would have to go into a bond issue. For example, reconstructing the entrance to a school to build a vestibule to have people come in and out. Those would be longer-term, more costly projects that would have to fall under a bond issue.
Crescent Heights, my turn.
Sure.
So I first want to echo this parent sentiments. I completely agree. I think when it comes to, we just had a really successful fundraiser for the PTA at Crescent Heights and raised a ton of money for the general PTA fund. I think when it comes to security, there are a number of parents across the schools that would be willing to raise the money and come up with stuff. So if there isn't funding in the district, why can't that be an option for us? And I feel like there has been some pushback, like, hey, we're willing to raise the money. Well, you can't, you have to go through all of these steps with the district. I work for the government, I get it. But I think when it comes to the security of our children, we should be willing to do whatever we can to work together and make our schools a little bit safer. I wanted also to get some clarification on one issue, particular here to Crescent Heights. I attended a meeting with Principal McGeeney and some other parents, and the message that I got, and perhaps I misunderstood, was that the principals really don't have a lot of ability to make changes within their schools, but then I heard you say that they do have a lot. So specific to Crescent Heights, I'd like to know who makes the decision, whether it's the principal or the district, as to whether or not the hallway doors can be closed and locked during the day. And if that's something that is made by Principal McGeeney, can we have that conversation with them and see if that's something that can be done? As for the classroom doors, whether they should be locked during the day or if we can fundraise, I will personally sponsor a classroom door for my child's classroom, a way to lock the door from the inside. And again, I completely agree with you. I think we could have that funded by the end of the night for every school here in Browns Point. Why can't we do that? So those are kind of my questions, and I just really want to clarify who makes the decision. Is it the principal or is it the district? And whoever it is, can we have that conversation again about Crescent Heights here? When can we get the doors locked? When can we make, it sounds like Browns Point just made the decision this week to have everything going through one access point. When are we having that conversation about Crescent Heights? And I'm sure Northeast Tacoma would like to have the same conversation. So just some clarification and follow-up based on who actually makes the decision. Thank you.
So, a few things. As Dan pointed out, one of the areas that we've been working on is working with the Tacoma Police Department in assessing lockdowns throughout the entire district. One of the things that we look at the various buildings, and so I need to go global first, and then I'll sort of come back just to this specific area. Fair? Okay. So one of the global aspects that we look at is not only the ages of the kids that we're dealing with, right? So in a crisis situation, your high schooler is going to respond very differently than elementary kids are going to respond. I know that we were just doing an assessment at one of our sites where we work with preschool kids. So keep in mind that we're talking to kids down to the age of 2. So how we're going to advise a facility that works with kids that young is going to be very different than how we're going to advise a facility where middle schools are involved. As you also know, is we have a breadth of programs that Tacoma Public Schools offers, including for medically fragile children. Okay, so let's just keep all of that globally in mind. So the lockdown procedures that are advised is just a benchmark. You have to have a place to start with. And the first place in consultation with our law enforcement partners is that hunkering down when something is not right is probably the initial best first step to take, because it takes a moment to assess what's going on. I don't know if any of you have ever been involved in a situation where something occurred and you had to sort of collect your wits for a moment and try to figure out what's going on. So hence why you're going to get a response that the lockdown is our preferred immediate response to something. Then dependent on what you're able to assess or whether you can figure out what's going on, we're going to try to decide whether we're going to leave the area, because that is one of the recommendations, is if you're able to leave the place of threat, then leave the place of threat. Some of our older schools have classroom doors that exit directly out, directly from the classroom. So in a facility like that, the recommendation is going to be, hey, get out, right? But it also depends on where you're at inside the facility. You know, if you're at the core, inside, deep into the facility where an exit is not as close, and you have a group of young kids that are freaking out, you know, for those of you that have been raised in large families or have your own large family, you know, getting 5 kids out of a place is difficult, much less getting 20 some odd kids out. Does that make sense? Okay. So I want to point that out first. The general recommendation by the district is to secure as many of your doors as possible. So what we have to do is we have to allow maximum entry when you bring your kids to school. What we want to be able to do is allow them to get into the building as quickly as possible and get them into their classrooms as quickly as possible. To do that, we can't just use one door, right? So you have a large elementary schools, you know, our elementaries range anywhere from 300 and something to 500 and some odd kids. Getting them into the facility and out of the outside area for us is really important. And that's how we have all the processes of getting them in for breakfast, lining them all up. All those pieces come into play. Once the facility is full, then our recommendation to the principals is lock as many exterior doors and reduce to one primary entrance. So that, but let's think about that. So we get on and now it's recess time, right? So the kids do have to have recess. So now we open up a part of the facility again and we put the kids outside. So as much as possible, what we're trying to do is control the facility access to keep people from coming in at areas that they're not supposed to be. We do work with playground supervisors to look out for suspicious activity. One of the things that we work on is anybody in this facility, anybody can call a lockdown. It's not just the principal. Anybody can call a lockdown. If I have a noon hour supervisor outside, and I say they're not mine, but you know what I'm saying. And they see what they perceive to be a threat coming from outside of the school, they have a right to immediately go old school and start yelling for a lockdown and get the facility secured and get kids back inside the house. So there's a lot of moving pieces to this. As far as, I want you to think about something though in terms of locking classroom doors. Let's do participatory here. There may be teachers here. What is the first thing that a staff member should do when a lockdown is declared inside a building? Anybody here know?
Lock the doors.
It's lock the door, but there's something more important. See, and I'm not trying to be, patronizing, okay? The question is not meant in that vein. It is lock the door, but what goes with locking the door? Look down the hallway and see if someone is outside the hall. That's the problem. Here's part of the problem. I understand that, and we do recommend that if you can keep your classroom door locked all the time, do it. A lot of that ends up being out of convenience. But the first thing that should happen is we're assuming that every child is inside the classroom all the time. And they're not. We teach kids to become self-reliant, so upper elementary, 4th and 5th, and we allow them to go to the restroom. We have them transitioning to other teachers and things of that nature, right? So the last thing we want is for teachers to get into the habit of having locked their door and never checking out in the hallway. Because they need to pick up who's ever out there, including you as a parent, if you happen to be visiting the site. So there are no easy solutions to this, because a lot of it is us having discussions with staff, asking educators, right? So these are people that have all been raised as nurturers and educators, to all of a sudden go cop. A lot of people don't even know how they're going to react when something happens. So one of the things that we spend a lot of time in, and we've had lockdowns where our own police officers have observed, we actually plant kids in the hall during lockdowns, right? So some people are asking, well, do you guys practice this stuff? Yes, we do. We plant kids in the hall. We've actually seen teachers open a door, look at a kid, shut the door. They looked, but they didn't see. If that's your child, that's not going to work. Does that make sense? So it's an extremely, not making excuses to you all, but we're blessed to be in a district that provides a wide array of services for all of our kids. But the minute we say that, then we have to also consider how do we keep all of those kids protected. Not just some of them, but all of them. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question? I'm not trying to, Yes, ma'am. So a lot of the principals, we do use social media. So we'll either, what they do is teachers will get on email and will send an email back to the office saying, hey, I've got this kid. So whenever you bring it, because the expectation is it doesn't matter whether they're in your class or not. If they're in front of your classroom door, you pull them in immediately. What we do is we begin a process of accountability during the drill. And we try to embed that as part of the process to let the front office know that you picked up somebody else's kid.
Quick question.
So,
Before we move to the next question, I just want to make sure that that question was answered. And Miguel, I don't know if you're the right person, but shake your head if I'm summarizing correctly. It sounds like we want an answer as to whether it's a building decision or a district decision about who can make decisions about short-term security measures. And then a question about whether we can fundraise.
well, I can't answer the fundraiser question.
So I don't know who the right person is, but
I'm going to punt to that because that's a policy maker.
Okay.
And I'm not a policy.
And then we'll go to the next question.
What I would say is that we consult back and forth. Ultimately, a principal can make decisions about locking doors and things of that nature, unless we find that something that a principal wants to do is a violation of some form of regulatory piece, right? Otherwise, we do a lot of consulting back and forth, and we lock buildings and say, yeah, that would be a good move. No, have you thought about this? Does that make sense? So I guess it's not always going to be just singular.
And the fundraising question.
I can help you.
Okay.
So I'm Josh, I'm the principal of Northeast Tacoma Elementary. And we do have a ton of doors in Northeast because it was built at a different time. And what I can tell you is we have one door that's open in the front for families right in front of the office and one door that's open to the playground. Everything else is locked down. We did have a situation that in Federal Way recently that there was a shooting, shots fired, and I immediately put the building in lockdown. Immediately. Didn't know how far away it was. I knew that it was in the vicinity, and I wasn't going to mess around with that. After that, the other two schools, as well as the middle school, all went into lockdown immediately. We take it very seriously. Like, these are our children. And so as far as that piece goes, we as a building, we sat down and we said, well, what are we going to do? We asked these questions about the hallways. I'm going to be out in the hallway and locking. And what we ended up doing at Northeast was we had all the doors locked and we got magnets. Put the magnets over the door, so the teacher opens the door, doesn't have to go out in the hallway, looks, pulls kids in, and we did this drill. Pull the kids in, take the magnet off, shut the door. So it was quick, it was cheap. Had a bunch of magnets and stuff like that. But the other piece was this, is that when that happens, during drills or any other time that children, and we had a 5th grader down, we intentionally planned to pull the kids down by the kindergarten area and the 1st grade area. So it wouldn't be like, you shouldn't be here, pull them in. And once that happens, the students said, I'm in this person's classroom, please email them. They emailed the other teacher, they emailed me as the principal and the office staff. And so that way the whole building knew where everyone was. There's a whole bunch of emails, it was all staff email. I have the student, they're okay. I have this. So then as a teacher, they're not like, oh, what about this student who was in the bathroom? What about this student? The other piece is this, as I can tell you, is that when we go into lockdown, I lock the building. And I make sure that everyone is locked, and make sure that everyone's okay. Because that's my job. You send us your kids to make sure that we take care of them like they're your own. And I have a 4th grade daughter, and I expect the same thing for her. So we do care about your kids, and we truly want to make sure it's as safe as possible. We're figuring out different ways. As far as the funding piece, it is going to be a policy piece that is outside. I can't answer that right now, but we do want to make sure it's as safe as possible.
Before you move on, could I just suggest with the door locks, that at the elementary school level, as an elementary school teacher, I know where my kids are pretty much 100% of the time, or who's with them. And we do have in our security plan some cell phone numbers of people, pivotal people in the building, not just the principal. So this idea of going out and locking the door, of course I could look out there, but it takes me a lot longer to go out, lock the door and get back in than it takes me to just look out. And once my door is locked, I don't look back out anyway. I'm absolutely accountable for every one of my children though. And if I know one's missing, I think social media, we can call each other's classrooms. Did you get my kid? I mean, there's people to call. So I guess I just want to advocate the thought process of really thinking about that interior option. And I know some things are legal and some things aren't, but I think there's some things that could be put in. And I think we would still address, I would hope we would still address your concern about checking for other kids. We could put in a protocol that would say you still are, obligated to do this or that, but there's a much faster way. And when we know we have all of ours, things can go a lot quicker. So I just wanted to add that.
Sort of been, no problem, wait.
No, it's not working.
It's not, I don't think it's sort of caveat and apropos of the discussions of heightened access control, which of course obviously is pivotal. The egress and ingress points are a major facet of internal security, but just from a security standpoint, it seems like there's a large vulnerability in challenge access in that there's a lot of unchecked-in individuals that do roam the premises, parents alike, older children, etc., that don't have badges on, visitor or volunteer badges. So my concern is, well, it's great to have access point restrictions. It's nearly cost-free, etc., and that's all well and good, but if we're not having anybody, like for instance this office, the way it's structured, most often or not, the office individuals, the personnel are busy doing their jobs, and they're not sitting there screening people coming and going. It's a total free-for-all. So what is the stance from the district to check on this pretty large vulnerability that we have to control and make sure that we restrict access? Because right now, it's not plausible unless somebody's posted out front. You can have one access point all day, which 90% of the people use that door, but if no one's making sure you actually check in, who's going to say who's inside the building? It doesn't matter. If you go into lockdown, you're locking down individuals that shouldn't be in there in the first place. Second tier to that sub-question is what is the policy on restricting non-school individuals to the premises? Like the other day, driving by Northeast Tacoma, and there's high school and older kids all playing basketball and hanging out and stuff on the property in the playground area. Is that allowable, or should there be some sort of restriction to who's interacting and hanging out on the playground during school? And this was during school hours, not after school hours. So those are my two main questions regarding access.
Okay. So, number one, school facilities are closed campuses during the use of the facility as an instructional site. So, there are not supposed to be kids that are here utilizing, or anybody in the community utilizing the facility, including people walking their dogs during the school day. I mean, that's the bottom line. The truth of the matter is, of course, getting a good handle on that becomes very difficult. But people that are here at that time should be asked to leave. We do try to send out school patrol, but our school patrol officers, which we might have 4 during the course of the day, roam the entire district. So that is the policy. Closed campuses during the instructional day, and that would include, I think when it gets a little complex is because you guys are co-located, or at least Crescent Heights is co-located with Meeker, so a lot of times there are family members that come down here. And I know that the elementary principals work really hard to help balance the need for older siblings to come and try to walk their younger siblings back home. I know that we have that issue throughout the district where sometimes older siblings are not exactly appropriate when they come to the elementaries. So I answered that one first because it was a little easier. Refresh my memory on the first chunk again. Oh, thank you. Yeah, we will agree that one of the issues with our plants is they are so large that for people to be able to monitor every person that walks inside the facility is difficult. I was a high school assistant principal. It's hard. It's hard. So I will agree with that, and you're correct in that the challenge with that would be the only way to possibly do it is either go with visitor access locking entry kind of concept, or having actually posting someone. And that's something that we're constantly looking at, because the other part of it is, and I think you used the term challenge, right? Is that what I heard you say? Yeah, there's that challenge component. One of the things that I do as director of security is I'll actually walk onto the playground covering my badge because I want to be challenged. I walk into schools all the time waiting to be challenged, waiting to see if staff feel comfortable saying, I'm sorry, can I help you out? And I'm always, schools by nature, we're very welcoming, right? So it's also a good cultural piece. But I do agree that that's definitely going to continue to be a challenge until we are at a place where we have complete access control. And that's going to take some work.
Sir, excuse me real quick. I know I'm supposed to check in the front, but I walked into the side doors with your whole time, knowing when we walk out of these stores up here to create something more.
Crescent Heights, I don't know, you're talking about this lower parking lot?
Yeah,
there?
that's right. Middle of the day.
Yeah. I would probably say, lock them up, I mean, here's the thing.
Okay, I'll walk them.
No, what I'm saying, I'm saying, that, again, what I said was that we want to lock as many access points as possible. What does end up happening is that some of our community members get very unhappy that they have to walk extra to get to the front door. Yeah.
So I know all three of our schools all of our staff are on heightened alert. We're always looking for badges. Our parents who volunteer in the building are always keeping their eyes peeled, and occasionally there is someone that doesn't feel they need to check in. We go hunt them down. We do. They need to follow the rules, and we are nervous that someone's going to come in that shouldn't be there. Trust us that we do not want anybody unwanted in our buildings. We're the first ones that are in danger. So please know that all staff are keeping their eyes peeled.
So the other question was about the middle schoolers. So at Northeast, we do, the kids play basketball. I've gone out there and I've said, you can take it over to the park, because we do have the Metro Park, and they are able to use that area. We do have, Kelly, you're gonna have to help me with this one. It's like 5 to 8 middle schoolers roughly that do come. They've signed up to volunteer. We know they're our former students, and we do have them come on campus, and we have them do volunteering. And they've been amazing. The middle schoolers that we have coming back, they're outstanding elementary students, they're outstanding middle schoolers, they're going to be outstanding high schoolers. I've taught all 3 levels and worked at all 3 levels, and I can tell you that they're amazing. We do have students that do come on campus that I don't know, that aren't part of our volunteer program, and I go out and say, guys, you can't be here, you need to take it to the park or take it somewhere else. And they're really typically pretty respectful, but sometimes we don't know. So like to your point of like you drove by and you see them, I didn't know they were there. But that whole piece is a lot of times our teachers will look down and be like, they'll call down to the office and Kelly can attest, well, in the afternoon usually. They'll call down and be like, you got some middle schoolers looking like high schoolers out there, or there's somebody walking their dog through there, and I go down and I ask them, like, thank you so much for being here, please go to the park. And also in the building, if I see, and we have, Miguel was in our building the other day, he had a jacket on covering, and our second grade teacher, Mr. Dowd, said, excuse me, can I help you? And he complimented him, and I complimented the teacher, and we made sure that we talked to the staff about it and said, if you see someone, please say, welcome to our school, have you got a badge yet? And if they say no, then you walk them down. Now, this fact that they got into the school, because there are only 2 access points, and our gate is locked, is surprising. But we'd walk them down, and they'd have to fill out, if they wanted to volunteer, they have to fill out the volunteer pass. A part of volunteering that you should know about, and I think, raise your hand, have you done the volunteer process? All right, oh, you guys are amazing. All right, so part of the volunteer process is that you have your ID, the background checks. And I get the background check, so if the background check does basically pan out that there was something in the person's past, if it was like a traffic violation in 1985, I'm like, yeah, you can volunteer, you ran a red light or something, and that's usually not, on there. But those type of things. But if it's something where I'm like, no, I do not want you in the building, I don't feel like you're safe around our students, then I say no, and they're not allowed to volunteer. But we do take that seriously. We do have the Washington State Patrol background checks. Does that answer some of your questions a little bit? Or I can't speak to Crescent Heights. I only speak to
Some,
Northeast.
like the access to the top of Crescent Heights, you walk around line to, you're not even seasonal. The buzzer go off during the daytime, not only kids will find.
Yeah, I can't speak to Crescent Heights. But
So I think that's maybe the clarity here is what is a district policy versus a school policy? Locking the doors doesn't seem like it's going to be a school policy. That seems like something we need to work with Mr. McGeeney on here specifically. Badge access was answered in the question. That sounds like it's something we need, again, at the school level to try to come up with a policy that might help to control access. Is that right?
Yes.
So at different times, different doors are unlocked in the building. So at the start of the morning, we've got the daycare right here, so that door is unlocked, right? So that daycare can get in and out. That, right before the buses get here, around that 8:30 window, we unlock those doors. The two on this side towards the bus drop zone, so kids come off the bus and they get in quick and easy. And then the front door is unlocked like at 7:30 in the morning. At 9, that door and those two doors should be locked. Now, it's not exactly always 9 on the dot, and that's me and Berryman. We'll own it. You know, there's lots of things moving, a lot of moving pieces, but right around that time it's locked. Those doors stay locked till 3:30. And then at the end of the day, they lock them, and we help get the kids out, and then it depends. You've got bricks for kids, you've got all those other after-school programs, and that's kind of their access point in and out right then and there, and then and there. Yep.
My daughter comes here. And that door not be locked all the time. So not just anybody can come in 7 o'clock in the morning. Individually watching. Could you repeat the question? Yeah, either if parents have questions, if you can come up and we'll get you the microphone, or if you could repeat the question so everybody has the benefit of listening.
I'm going to give you this one because that's not again.
I know, sorry, that one's down.
I have a couple questions. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I have a daughter that comes here sometimes for school's out in the morning, and she's here very early, it's dark, and the door's unlocked. And I'm concerned that anybody can come in at any point of that day, and even when there's days the school district isn't in. So if they're in this space, can that door not be locked all day? My second question is, did I hear correctly when we're going to have one door that's the main access, and will that door always be locked other than beginning of the day, end of the day? Meaning badge access, bell, camera system, whatever. Is that correctly? For
Crescent
Browns
Heights.
Point,
Oh.
Crescent Heights,
Browns
Northeast.
Point is new. So
It's not new. It's the
Browns
old building
Point's-
right now. It's old.
I thought
So-
he was addressing the new building coming this
That was the new building, so I'm asking about the building now.
Who would like to answer that question about schools out at Crescent Heights?
I can work with schools out, like how they like to handle that. I mean, that's a conversation we can have with them about how they like to handle the door in the morning and the after school time. Because I mean, the door, I mean, yeah, for the daycare, I can have that conversation with them.
Cindy, could you explain what happens with schools out at Browns Point and how that came about? We have a buzzer now, right?
Yes, and we are fortunate we have a doorbell for schools out. So we just reiterated that door always has to stay locked because there was occasions it wasn't always locked. So they are committed to keeping it locked, and we have a doorbell. So whenever a parent comes to pick up their child or drop them off, they ring the bell, they immediately answer the door.
So Northeast does not have doorbell. There is the main entrance, so we have one main entrance door that families come pick up their kids. It's right outside the office. But for schools out, because our schools out is in the cafeteria, they come in through that door and then they go to the cafeteria and go into that piece. Inside the building, so it's kind of inside the building, doors are unlocked to all of the classrooms and also to the gym and to the cafeteria. But the main entrances to Northeast Tacoma Elementary are the front door, is the main entrance, the front classroom. Now there's like 7 doors there. They're all locked except for one. The piece I think that as far as how do we make it as secure as possible, but also make it so, we're a school, we can get kids in and out and families in and out. We have the one access point. When we go into lockdown, the very first thing we do is we go and lock those doors. The first thing we do is get an email and say, we're in lockdown. And then immediately go and lock the outside doors and put a sign up saying we're in lockdown, go away, in the nicest possible way. But basically, in all seriousness, we're in lockdown. But that one door saying, hey, we're going to lock this one door, just like the teachers lock the classroom doors, our office locks that one access point, and we're locked in. That point and also the one by the recess, the playground. So there's 2 doors that are open. But otherwise, our families would not be able to get in. We don't have someone to get up and walk and open the door. We also don't have the buzzers like some, and we don't have that technology. So right now we have the 2 doors that lock, and we lock them down immediately. Does that answer some of your, but I know you're not at Northeast.
Well, my daughter goes to Browns Point, so I'm
love to have
very
you.
happy
Come on
that
over.
it's locked all the time now. I'm very excited. So does that mean that there will always be an unlocked door at Browns Point, at Crescent Heights, at Northeast during the day, all day long? Okay, so in the future there will be all day locks.
For the new not for Northeast, as far as my understanding, unless something changes, we have the front door that they're able to come into, that they come to the office.
That's
Dan's going to answer
okay.
this question, it sounds like.
Same door.
For school?
Schools out, we have one door that they come in.
So there's not going to lock Northeast.
Start with the front door.
You're not going to get anything on your door.
No, not
at all.
the front door.
So just to reiterate, the superintendent's short-term goal is to expedite access control so that all the doors can remain locked at all times, and people have to be buzzed in. So that's at schools where we don't already have that, or schools where there aren't eyes on the front door. So where the main office is separated from the front door.
And what does expedite mean?
She's
Is
asked.
that 2019? Is that next month?
No, it won't be 2019. She's asked the chief operating officer to start getting bids on those systems for our schools. We're working with the police department to go around to all the schools and see exactly what they need for those short-term fixes, for those expedited short-term fixes, and then separately for longer-term fixes that might be incorporated into a 2019 bond issue. But her short-term goal is to get those access control systems in place as quickly as possible. We don't have the whole plan put together, but she wants it done quickly.
I guess you kind of just answered my question, but I guess I was looking for a realistic timeline of when we would get the access control or the buzz-in doors. But it sounds like we don't even have. I mean, I'm just going to throw this out here. Is two.
We're definitely not talking years.
We're not talking years, though. Okay, that's what I really wanted to hear. Is we're not talking years. And then I do have a question that just has to do with our school in particular, but. You know, we talked about, because we have that giant hallway that nobody can see. I know we had at one point discussed like roping it off. Like, you know, people obey the little rope lines that guide you, and maybe if we can have access to the rope off lines that say, must check in at office. I mean, is that realistic? Is that something that could be implemented quickly?
What school are you? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Crescent Heights.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yes.
Already been bought.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate all this information.
I've got a couple different questions. The first one is, why are volunteers not trained on lockdown? I've been volunteering in the Tacoma Public School District for a very long time. I have never, ever been trained on lockdown. And I've been in the building when a lockdown has happened and not known what to do and not known how to help the teachers with the children.
That's a great point, because I think that part of when we do lockdown, when people are inside the facility. So a few things that we ask, just generally speaking. in terms of sending messaging out to our communities, because we hope that not only volunteers, but even parents should have some training in lockdowns, right? And so one of the things that we ask principals is to send out messaging to parents saying, in the case of a lockdown, these are things that you would do, A, if you're in the facility, B, if you're transitioning to the facility, right? Because depending on how close you are to the door, you're either going to get the come on in, or you might get the you can't come in, and put your kid back in the car and leave, right? So I don't know how many of you guys have had that discussion. So if I'm hearing that, you know, one of the concerns for me is that any community member would be able to participate in any one of our emergency management drills successfully, because it's about keeping everybody safe. So if that's the case, then you know what, let me address that with the principals, because everybody should, the entire community should understand how this works, right? Because here's the other piece, and I'll point it out. One of the things that occurs in lockdowns, that we would ask of our entire community, is that when a school facility goes into lockdown, you know what is the first thing that happens in the building? Our office gets flooded with calls, right? And I get it. I totally get it. Okay, I get it.
You should see Facebook.
In all fairness, I have seen Facebook, and, you know, and we take the hits. But what I'm saying to you is that one of the things that we hope our community understands is that our first order of business when we lock down a facility is not going to be answering the phone. And it's not going to be getting on Facebook to tell you what's going on. It's going to be making sure our kids are all accounted for, and if we're looking at any email or answering any calls, it would be from the classroom. So that has to be a total community effort, and something that I think we just need to be articulate with our PTAs and our volunteers, and anybody else for that matter, our substitutes that come into the facilities. Okay?
Thank you. I think a prime example of that is I was the carpool driver the day after the Florida shooting for a bunch of Meeker students, and every single one of them had their parent tell them to do a different thing, including busting out the windows and jumping out the windows and running. So that was the plan for the carload of 13-year-old boys that day. So obviously there needs to be a little bit of education. The second thing that I was going to say is it's frustrating to see the words that the Tacoma Public School District hired yet another consultant to review this. You have a room full of people that enter buildings and exit these buildings day in, day out. We've had people say, this door's never locked, this door's never locked. The principals hear that stuff from us, but it's not that far on the stretch to involve a parent, a specially selected one. Let the principal pick a parent that they like. Let the PTA president, sorry you guys, tool around with the police officer, because they have expertise that we don't have, but we also have day-to-day knowledge, just like the principals, just like the teachers, but we're just another person that can provide insight to, this is what it looks like outside the building while you guys are teaching, you know? I asked the question at the Northeast Tacoma Council meeting about the fence at Browns Point Elementary. There was never a response from the school district. You had a representative there, you weren't there that night. That is going to be a major change for Browns Point, because currently their recess is shielded from the main street. With the new building, it won't be. And nobody could answer what type of shielding is there from a main drag that anyone can drive down the road and look at our kids playing recess. Or choose to not do something next. And then lastly, I'm somebody that actually loves your website and goes through it quite a bit. I would love to see you, and for parents that don't know, you can actually go and pull up exactly why people were suspended from Meeker as of 2018. All the reasons. It's a really difficult thing to dial down on. It's a very difficult filtering system, in my opinion, and I'm a pretty savvy computer person, but also the Student Climate Health Survey, which is part of the Safety and Violence Behaviors, The data is from 2013 and 2015. I think that's a problem. I would love to see more current data on what our students are actually responding to in terms of them carrying a weapon on school property or feeling safe at school or reporting being bullied. All that information is on the school website. So it was really knowledgeable. I felt empowered by that information, but at the same time, I'd love more current.
So one thing that I will have to take a look at, I know typically on all of our campuses, there is a chain link fence that separates you from the street and the playground area. As far as a fence that is a barrier that you can't see through, that's never been part of any discussion that I've been a part of, and nothing that I know that was ever planned. So I know that when we start looking at chain link fencing, the same as we do with all of our other campuses, if there's not a fence, I can guarantee that we can get a fence there. But if we're talking about a wood fence or something like that where you can't drive and see, then that's something that we'll have to have a discussion with.
It's a common problem, I know, because I've been around to a lot of other schools, and McCarver has the same problem. They're right on.
Well, every elementary we've got, I think, has that.
But a lot of the ones up here are shielded in some way that someone can't just simply drive down a mean street, roll down their window. Oh, there's kids. So. And given that we just had someone doing inappropriate stuff at the start of school, I just don't want him joining recess. That's all I say.
Who was that? I missed that person. One of my questions is, will the district or the principal be notifying us when the district has decided to choose a contractor and install the locking device on the front doors?
And we can make sure that's on our website, and we can decide, we can get that information out.
So you'll put it on the website, or will you? Because I don't go to your website.
Well,
I may do a little bit.
With
PTA. Okay. Okay, and then my second question is, you guys do lockdown practices and fire drills at all the most convenient times when everybody's all tucked away in classes. What are you gonna do when there's a nut job that comes up to the school at recess or at lunch? Or better yet, how about when we're having an assembly, when we're all in one gigantic room? Are you could you have a drill, a practice lockdown drill at that time?
So, yeah, we have had lockdown drills in some of our elementaries. I know that I've been present when we have had them practice that way. Some of them, I can't account for exactly how many are done at that time. I know that one of the big discussions for us, and one of the times as the director of security that I think a lot about, is pick up and drop off, because that's when you have the most parents and kids and everybody there. Those require a little more thinking, because the minute we change the amount of time that buses drop off and pick up kids for a drill, we've automatically impacted the entire district. I don't know if you guys have been involved in any ones where we had to delay transportation at one of our schools and kids weren't getting home till 7 o'clock at night. It was not a pretty sight. So that requires some real coordination with us and our contractor. I'll be honest with you on that one. In terms of delaying buses for a full drill practice, because what happens, and we actually had this happen at one of our middle schools where we did have a lockdown during pickup at the end of the day, for buses basically had to leave the site immediately, because the instruction is, if a lockdown occurs and we get a call from our partners, and what happened is we had some neighborhood activity, buses are immediately told, you need to leave, like right now, right? Because they can't sit. Think about that. And then every student that didn't make it to the bus had to go back to the building. And so then we have to, count both ways for kids that left and kids that came. Does that make sense? So I'm not making an excuse, but what I'm saying to you is that when you're responsible for transporting 28,000 kids, impeding bus transportation in one sector of the district. He's going to roll out to the entire district. So that's one of the areas. I know that schools do, and I have witnessed practices during lunch. I haven't witnessed one during an assembly. I know that because I'm not always aware what kind of the assemblies are, so we do some scheduling, and for me to get to 64 buildings takes a while. But I think I heard that you guys have them.
So we did have when the Federal Way shooting occurred. That was during lunchtime. And basically we locked down the lunchroom. I went out, and here's the pieces. Yeah, I mean, yes, little kids. And so I'm as calm as I can be with also like, we need to get inside. And so I'm like, all right, come on in there. Is this real? They're like, we're okay. We're just doing practice. Because you don't want your kids coming home freaked out, like to a whole other level. I'm like, come on in. We always do practices. We're just going to practice during lunchtime. They're like, okay. They're kindergartners. They're like, okay. And so they come in and they do the pieces. But as far as an assembly would actually be the easiest one, because you just walk 2-3 doors and you're like, we're all here. That's the easiest one for sure. But buses, as you said, that would be difficult as far as those pieces, because you have parents and all those different pieces. We would lock down the building and basically let them know they need to take their children with them. But the lunch one and the lunch and recess one is getting them all inside and then walking out through those 2 access points that they talked about before. Is this working? Okay. That was, they were orderly, and I think the piece is, as long as the adults are calm and bringing the students in and treating them like their own kids, their kids actually do really well. And as far as fire alarms and fire drills, that thing sometimes just goes off without us even like what's going on. And that just happens, and we do smooth the time around, because sometimes it's like, all right, the afternoon is definitely the easiest because you don't have all those transitions, but it happens at different points of time, and we also do move it. Maybe morning ones, maybe this piece. And then the other piece is that we do have students with autism. And for our students with autism, that we know very well, we really want to make sure that we do some prepping to make sure they're supported. So we do actually make sure they have the social story of what to do during this. And so we do make sure that our students, every single one of our students, are supported in that, and also are calm. When I get on, has anyone in here been in Northeast when we've done the practice room? When I get on the intercom, I sound like Mr. Rogers. I'm like, hello everyone, how are you doing today? I'm just because I don't want them to panic. I'm like, we're going to be doing a practice lockdown. This is happening right now. Well, actually, I was practice. We're going to be doing a lockdown. Please lock down. And then I walk them through all the different things to make sure the teachers know what they need to do. And that keeps our kids calm. So when you actually have a lockdown, try and be calm so our kids do the exact same thing as they were before. Does that answer some of your questions? You guys have anything you want to add to as far as?
We were part of that point where we were told to go under modified lockdown, and it was during recess. So we have radios for our playground supervisor, told them we're going on modified lockdown, bring the kids in. Teachers came running to help get the kids in. We locked down the cafeteria. It worked, and we did it quick. We also have a plan if an intruder comes into the building during lunch, we're not going to bring those kids from recess into a danger zone. The playground supervisors know that we would radio them and say you need to get off the campus. They would go to Seabury. We called Seabury, and they would take us in. Likewise, if Seabury had something happen to them, we'd take them in.
We don't always tell teachers we have drugs either. So it's not always planned. They don't know.
Can I ask one more question? Or I can sit down. And then my last question was, could the district do something to help better with the communication with things that happen in the neighborhood? For example, we had somebody in our neighborhood that was mentally unstable, and I know that there's guidelines of what you have to tell, but I think that the severity of what happened wasn't really relayed to parents about how unstable this individual is, and he's already back in the community, and he's already harassed other people, you know, outside of the school. Not, it wasn't, this time it wasn't somebody at the school. But I feel like better communication with parents and teachers and kids, because I think that this, I know that there's, you know, regulations and restrictions, but I also feel like people weren't informed enough to where they were told, when you see this individual, you need to run away, go away, don't engage, just, you know. Can the district do, like, I thought maybe they would have had a meeting.
So we're going to jointly answer that. So I'll start because just so you know, so we're talking about the gentleman that's a little mentally unstable, actually, a lot mentally unstable. So what we do in a situation like that, first off, is just a reminder that, again, anybody in a facility can call a lockdown. Principals have the complete discretion to call lockdowns at any time. And one of the things that we say to principals is err on the side of safety. So if it smells bad, I'd rather take a hit for inconveniencing people, you know, all day long. So in the case of this particular person, then immediately what happens is that we're getting information through the TPD radio communications, because we do, one of the things that occurs is that TPD will advise our principals if they feel it warrants it to put the school in lockdown. So principals will actually get calls going, put the place in lockdown, and we don't even ask why. They just say police activity, and then what happens is I start getting calls asking what's going on. So in the case of this particular individual, the end result for us was that we did put out a security advisory to all our school patrol officers, because we want our guys to be aware that this guy's out there and that he's not in his right mind and can potentially be threatened harming people. This is the guy that drove on the sidewalk and tried to run over the pedestrian and all of that, and he lives in the neighborhood somewhere. I have his address somewhere, but you know, I didn't memorize it. We did put out what I call be on the lookout for this person. All of our staff, in fact, Cindy received information specific to this individual, as well as the truck license plate, and basically told that should this person approach the school, we will get an immediate 911 call and a lockdown. Okay, so that part is the part that we do. Then I'm going to hand over to Lieutenant Aguirre, because they can talk more to the general threat to the community.
Right, like you said, that could be a little bit of a problem with the mental health issue, because, you know, the expectation would just be like your mental health, or excuse me, your medical record, and that's sort of where the conflict is. In this particular instance, this actually was assigned to the lieutenant for follow-up, and you should see some resolution in regards to that particular individual. So I think probably some of it we have to put out generically as far as, but just I think the general awareness of who the individual is, what they look like, what they're driving, but just, you know, you can call 911 for any reason whatsoever and you can respond. It's really difficult with mental health because to get into it really, it's very pretty in-depth, but there's a lot of factors that we might like their behavior not be normal behavior or regular behavior, but that doesn't necessarily go to the part where we're actually allowed to involuntarily commit. There's certain criteria that so there's quite a story on this individual. So I guess sort of putting that out there also, I think a lot of times the expectation is, well, he has mental health issues, he should be able to do something about it, and that unfortunately isn't always the case. We do have, the police department does have 2 officers that are what we call co-responders, and they're actually in the police department. They're designated mental health professionals. They actually do ride with the officers and go out to the scenes. They can respond to the schools. They're a great asset that we have, and a tool that can be used also. And sometimes they can take some intervention steps without being involved in really committing somebody. So, but this particular instance, I know that's been assigned, and it actually is a school truck. So,
Well, did you say that you can share the license plate and what he looks like? Well,
So the way that we got the license plate and a picture was that someone had actually So this is one of the times I do like social media. Let me just say honestly, as director of security, I hate social media. No, but this was one of the times that I really liked it, because what had happened is someone snapped a picture of the guy. So we got the license plate, and then what happened was that we also had a picture of the guy because he was looking in his rearview mirror. And the picture was of such good resolution that we expanded the rearview mirror and took that. Does that make sense? Yeah. Try to use technology.
Share that information with parents.
I'd have to check on that with our legal counsel, honestly. One of the areas that I'm really grateful.
Probably not, because it wasn't shared.
It was shared. What I will tell you is that because it impacted the school, I shared it with the school directly, but I also advised, like she said, on mental health issues, I also advise, whenever I share stuff of that nature, I do remind our staff that as employees of the Tacoma Public Schools, there are policies that if they overshare, I mean, even though they try to do it in a nice way, they could get themselves in a lot, we can get ourselves in a lot of trouble. So.
But that's what I'm saying, so that you do something to
Well,
improve that, so that you don't put it on them, put it on, like, you guys have the regulations, you know, so maybe send out someone from TPD and say, we're gonna share the information, and it's legal.
Well, there's a lot of, and unfortunately, it's not that simple. I wish it were, but there's a lot of, it really is so situationally dependent on what the information is. And we obviously are concerned for the community, and that's our priority. And I know in this particular instance, I believe, usually a lot of times we'll notify staff, so they're maybe aware of a particular individual, or we'll notify the school resource, well, obviously we will, the school resource officer of the school campus. Right, the CLOs are community liaison officers. They're aware that the officers that are on patrol in this particular individual is known to our patrol units, and they're aware of it. So, but as far as real specifics, sometimes we can't give that. We can give some generalities, just so it's a caution, so you're aware of this particular. But to give you, there's a really, even as you know, with the sex offender registry, I mean, there's real specific guidelines as to those, and those are, you know, just kind of.
With the community liaison officer, we have Bartholomew's, I don't know his last name.
No, Brandon Showalter, right.
Yeah, Brandon, I think is the guy.
Yes, could he have just shared, like, this is what he looks like, this is what his car looks like, be very cautious, stay away if he tries to engage, well, you know what I mean?
Here's what I would say to you.
No?
This is the one side of social media I do like, is that people have information that we can't get, but they can. So neighborhood block watches, you know, they take pictures of people in cars, right? Because I told you I got this off social media.
Right.
Then what I would say to you is you can do things we can't.
Right.
Now that said, you know, I say that kind of thing advisedly, right? Because you know, people
If
have
he
rights.
finds your information that you posted that,
Yeah, it could
then
be.
why I want the cops to do it, so it goes after them, not me. I mean,
Well, he has a little out there.
Yeah. I know this was a really hard issue at our school, so I think if there's more questions about that particular incident, maybe we can stay after and answer them.
It's 8:20, so let's take the remaining questions, and then we'll stay for a few minutes after, and so our additional.
Just two quick questions. One for the police department. I know it's one for the police department. I had read somewhere that some school districts are offering police officers free lunch or free breakfast so that there's more positive police presence at the school. And I was wondering if that's been discussed at all with the school district and you guys. I just think having more random police presence and obviously bringing the positive side to it for the kids would be a win-win.
I can speak to that a little bit, actually. So I do I'm the community, so I do the one sector, which is the Hilltop, and it comes out to Northeast Tacoma. And so I would agree with you. I think when DARE went away, we have a big disparity. I mean, it might not have resolved the drug problem, but there's a big disconnect between students and children now and officers. And so the police department, actually, that's part of our goal, part of Project Peace, was like a percentage. We keep trying to increase those interactions. We do have youth academies that we do. We do have, like, for instance, Brandon Showalter, the CLO. He does come out regularly to the schools. Our biggest challenge is that our
right now is staffing and the availability of officers. And I mean, I don't want to make it an excuse. It's a big frustration for us. I mean, to me, it's something here and here, and I feel like we really want to get out there. And certainly, there's some officers that are, I would say, better at it sometimes than some of the others. And that's certainly something we could take back and give us feedback, because I know from even with the youth academy that I've been working on, we said, how do you want to see officers? How can we engage the kids? And that's part of the problem too, because if they're not regularly used to seeing them around, then the assumption is that there's something negative that's happened, and that's not what we want to present. And that's our biggest, I think, challenge is the consistency. Like, we do have officers that go out, but it's consistently getting there, and that's kind of what we're working towards. So, and I know that also Harvey, that's, I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. That's probably 20 years longer than that ago. Our traffic division is actually bringing that out as kind of an interactive piece that'll work with children of elementary school age. So it's small steps, unfortunately. I wish I could give you a more glowing, but it's definitely something we're working on, and if you do have feedback on that, we would appreciate that.
So we should contact you or the district?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, from the police perspective.
Contact you.
Yeah, I can take that back.
Okay. Then one other quick one. Mr. McGeeney. Real quickly, first of all, thank you guys so much, because I know this is the evening. Some of you don't sound like you're feeling so well. Thank you for answering all these questions. It's very helpful, especially for those parents who could not be here tonight. But before we leave here, my biggest concern is what can we do now that doesn't cost any money to increase the layers of security? Obviously, we would love to have a brand new building. We would love to have a vestibule with buzzers and cameras and bells and whistles. We are not going to get that now. We probably won't have it until my kids aren't in this school any longer. So what can we do now? I know that you're putting up a visitor sign with a little, come to the office, here's some ropes, follow this sign. That's great, but if somebody's going to do something to the building, I highly doubt they're going to read visitors enter here and sign in. So my question is, before we leave here tonight, what steps can you do as a principal, or can you guys do as district representatives, to add layers of security that don't cost anything? Parents have suggested having the teachers keep their doors closed and locked, keep the hallway doors closed and locked, have somebody in front of the front door to make sure somebody's coming in and out, have the visitor badges that are exposed when you walk into the office put behind the counter, have the secretaries check people's ID and sign them in. Currently, yes, and I know the secretaries know who I am, so they don't ask for my ID. I would be happy to share it. I walk in, sign my name, grab a yellow badge, and off I go. Once you have the yellow badge on, I think most teachers assume that you've been vetted and you're okay to be a visitor and a volunteer in the building. Who's to say that somebody doesn't walk in, perhaps a parent has a restraining order, the staff isn't aware of it, they scribble their name in, they grab any visitor's badge, walk in, and take a child. There needs to be layers of security now while we wait for the police and the school district and the consultant to come and see what needs to be done with our schools. What layers can be done now, free of charge, to make the parents feel more comfortable and at ease until we wait for the levy or expedited processes to happen?
I would just say, actually, just sort of to put out there, I think, for free of charge is the communication. I just don't think enough can be said. I know working, because that's what I do is community issues, and I will say working we're really fortunate with the police department because we've been really supported by the community, and I can't say enough about that, especially this area where I work. And I think really it's just important that for us, it's just such a force multiplier. I don't know if that word's overused, but really because of the community hearing or explaining to us what's going on or things that they hear, or I think just up north recently, the grandmother turned in her grandson, I think it was. I mean, it's just a matter of, and us communicating with Tacoma Public Schools and just really, I mean, I guess it's oversimplified, but I just kind of want to put that out there that really any help that we get from the community and communicate with our partners, just as a whole, to focus on that is what the information we use and go forward with. Because if we don't know that it's occurring and we're not aware of it, I know in a lot of these cases there's prior red flags or there's prior communication that's been out there. And so I think at least from our perspective, that's one thing that's really important to remember.
I'm going to agree with that. I think in the last set of incidences, a lot of information came to us on a timely basis. We were able to address threats to schools. And actually, there's a lot that can happen on the weekend. I know that Lieutenant Travis and I spent an entire weekend together by phone, Saturday through Sunday night, trying to address and hunt down a threat to our schools. You know, the bottom line is your kids know stuff. They know stuff. And we, the adults, don't know stuff. And that's been the theme through every major incident that's occurred. And even if you listen carefully to some of the kids talking about the Florida incident, they knew stuff that wasn't reported. They even said we didn't report it, right? But, so that's part one. So, you know, monitor your kids' social media. If you're hearing gun stuff, let us know right away. You know, I'd rather, again, err on the side of safety. And no one wants the police knocking at your door saying, hey, your kid's posting stuff about guns. So that's part one. And TPD has been, you know, they're a great partner. We spend a lot of time talking on the phone and trying to figure things out in terms of those kinds of threats. The second part I would say to us is always going to be what it's always been, is the community partnership, to be able to fill in some of the gaps that, you know, we can't fill in when our teachers aren't inside the classroom. So I guess the first big thing would be, I know that some of the PTAs are addressing having someone assist at the front door until we get a good handle on this. Now that said, you know, we want to be careful how we do that. We can't be searching everybody's stuff. You know, it's the United States of America. I did see a recommendation on random searches of people's stuff. We probably have to have a discussion about that one. But, you know, it is, because the other piece that you mentioned is, you know, we deal with custody orders and stuff all the time. You can imagine, we have 28,000 kids. Somewhere in here, there's some kind of DV, domestic violence issue, right? We have custody orders that we're addressing all the time. Our legal staff is very responsive and quick. But it really, so our principals work really hard to try to make sure that people accessing the facility and trying to access children have legitimate reasons why they should be doing it. But I think maybe the biggest thing right now would be to get some assistance. You know, with some customer service. Hi, how are you? How can I help you? And why are you here? And oh, you're one of the parents. You know, and maybe if you really wanted something that would have more of an immediate impact. But it's always something that we've always wanted anyway, you know, in our schools, right? So that would be what I would say.
So Mr. McGeeney, is that something that you're willing to do, is to move the visitor badges from out in the front of the office to behind the counter and so the secretaries have access to it? I mean, what would be really ideal is if you had a machine that you scan the driver's license, a computer program pops up and it shows who you are and your pictures. We probably could fundraise for that.
Yes. We talked about
There
this.
is a software in the school district.
Yeah, and I'm realizing that the question we submitted is the wrong school. We wrote in our question submitted to the district about the system at Lowell, and I talked to Whittier today, and they have this system.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if someone at the district is familiar with what Whittier is using, because they love it. That's what I was told today. And if the district has, you know, regulations or rules about having systems in more schools. It's exactly what you're talking about, where you scan your...
Yeah, so basically everybody walks into the office, you give the person your ID, they scan your driver's license. Right then it would pop up on the screen if you're approved, one, to be a volunteer. Two, if there's some sort of domestic violence restraining thing, or something where the parent's not supposed... A background check, yeah. So it's your driver's license that gets scanned. And then a label is printed out with your name and your picture and then where you're supposed to be in the building.
The one Whittier has.
Have you heard of that?
There's quite a few of those types of systems out there.
So is that something that our school could have, whether it be the district provides that or whether the PTA can fundraise for that?
So I volunteer at Whittier, so I'm one of the sources of information here. You walk into their office, they use their kiosk that anybody can use to do their lunch account or whatever. But there's a software program that's on that same kiosk that all the schools have that has anybody that's been approved as the volunteer. So they've gone through all the background. You don't have to do any new scanning your driver's license. They go through the normal process. You're in the system. So you find your name and all of that, and it logs your volunteer hours for the school. And it prints out a label for you. So it prints out the label out of the label machine, and you slap it on you, and you go walking down the hallway. And if you're not approved in the system, it does something different on that label. I don't know because I'm approved. But the nice thing is the secretaries sit back at their desk, they don't have to do a thing. They can keep doing their job. But they see everybody that comes in and is using the kiosk, and anybody that's having trouble and isn't getting a badge, they see. And then you walk back out. And their school doesn't have a buzzer system, and they sit and they kind of watch out a window seeing who comes into the building. So they could still have somebody walk all the way in, but from a volunteer standpoint, it's pretty slick as far as that goes. The secretaries at Browns Point knew all about it, but they said that they didn't have the funds, and I said, I think I know someone that has some funds. So if the other schools...
Sean, can you answer Amy's question about badge?
No, we're not going to move the tags at this point. It's not practical from a number of angles and aspects. We have met as staff. We started with the leadership team talking about some of the practical things that we can do going forward in terms of being more vigilant, kind of around that idea of the see something, say something kind of thing. We've done that in 3 years. I've probably talked to half a dozen adults in the building who have not had a badge on, and I just go friendly and say hi. If you don't know, usually grandma or grandpa doesn't know, and I just get them fixed up and get them the blue badge. We've talked about the option of whether or not they want to lock the door or not lock the door with the teachers, and where their comfortability with that option is. So we've started to explore some of those options in terms of what we are and what we aren't going to do, and I've worked with Berman to make sure that those doors are pretty hard locked 9 to 3. So, I mean, those are kind of the main frontline things that we've done right away.
So
we educating the kids not to open the door. Sorry to interrupt.
Pardon?
We educating the kids not to open the door. I was a volunteer here just 2 weeks ago to watch stuff. I'm walking the perimeter, the kid opens the door. So if there's a threat.
Agreed, and I would actually say even when we put like one of those locks on the very front of the door, we buzz Dana in, and then she lets the next person, like, you gotta wait. I don't know how we're gonna work that all out. Like, there's gonna be pieces to this that are still very, but you're right, the kids are very loving and trusting. And so someone waves at the door down, I've seen them do it too. You just kind of have to remind them, hey, I really appreciate you trying to be really nice. You might even know that person, but you need to not open the door. And I mean, I think it's staff to it. I mean, it's a tricky
So
little thing.
as of like tomorrow morning when they come to school, everything is the same tomorrow morning as it was when we had your meeting. Everything's exactly the same. Nothing's changed.
I would say we're all very much more heightened, we're much more aware, and I know
But no,
Lene brought it
we're
up
not
with
for
the
now.
leadership team, but we're not
Nothing's changed.
moving anything.
Okay, thank you.
Top prosecutor.
Thank you. All right, so during this conversation, 2 thoughts have come up, and that's the first is, with all these suggestions that are coming around, I just appreciate the role that you guys are playing, because I'm just letting my imagination spin here, and there's no foolproof solution to this. And I don't say that as a defeatist. I just say that a lock is good for an honest person. And people who are out there to hurt our kids are going to bypass everything that's been mentioned here tonight, one way or another. Again, not defeatist. You guys have been tasked with educating every kid in the city, and now we're ramping all this stuff up on the school system. So just can't imagine what that burden must be like. Appreciate the efforts that are trying to be made. And as I've sat here and listened, and this is good, this is what we're here for, I've heard a lot of what we expect you to do. There have been a couple suggestions about what we can do. See something, say something. Probably the most effective thing until you guys get inundated with false alarms and kind of worn out with that, or the threat level kind of diminishes and we're not scared anymore. I certainly appreciate my neighbors offering to pull money out of their own pockets and pay for security measures. That's it's very encouraging. I kind of wish I saw more of my neighbors here, but so do you. My question is this, and maybe I want to hear from the principals first. What is something we can do to help you in securing our facilities?
A volunteer.
I think keeping always improve. We're all in it together, and we are the first ones on the front line. We are committed to keeping your kids safe. Any one of us would throw ourselves in front of a bullet to save your kids. Trust me, that is why we're in this business. Keeping eyes open in the hallways if you don't see a badge. Ask them, gee, did you check in, or did you know that you need to get a yellow badge? That helps us. I mean, sometimes we're in meetings in the morning. We're not always 100% eyes open, so you need to be our eyes also. Someone wants to ride the bus. Raise your hand.
Come on, you can come to work and you ride the bus all you want. So, I think the piece is that what is the common thread for people that come in and do harm rather? And part of that is the mental health of our community. And we don't talk about it typically as a full community. I know families that don't talk about it. They're like, oh, that's just my cousin, my niece, my nephew, and yeah. But I do think the piece is that really making sure that mental health and supporting our children with their social emotional learning is critical. When we grew up, and I'm the same age of many of you, times were different. Media was different. YouTube did not exist. The video games were the Nintendo Mario, where it was like a little, that's what I have in my basement in the box, 1984 Nintendo. It didn't look like what I see kids playing today. Point blank. What I'm trying to say is this, is that we really need to make sure that we're supporting our children and we are not stigmatizing our students and our community with mental health pieces that we can get counseling around. One of the pieces that we do is multi-tier systems of support. It's a fancy word for response intervention, which is a fancy word of, hey, we really want to give additional support for our children, academically, behaviorally, and through their social emotional learning. And one of the really important pieces is that a lot of times when I have conversations with families, they don't want to go counseling because there's stigma attached. They don't want to do these different pieces, and I'm like, listen, we're the school, we can do as much as we can do, but really supporting the whole child is the whole child. Your mind and your body are all connected. And so it's truly important that if you have concerns about your own children's mental well-being, please make sure you take time to be with them. We need to, if you want to be blunt, put your cell phones away and spend time with our children. I am guilty of it just like everyone else, where I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm doing it, and my daughter's like, hey, come on, let's go out and throw the football around. And I'm like, you're right. That type of stuff and making those bonds with our own children is extremely important. And if you have concerns or you have a question about that, making sure that you're connecting in with your school, and we can wrap around together as a school and a community as well as a family, make sure that our children are supported completely. That's the key. We can put up all the doors or the velvet ropes and all that stuff that you want, but we want to make sure that our students are supported both academically, but through their social emotional well-being as well. And that's what I would say as far as the one takeaway. We need to stop stigmatizing people that need additional support and make sure that we actually go out and get it. I used to teach high school psychology, and the conversation I have with more parents, I've been doing this 11 years as a principal, and in that 11 years, the conversation that I have with families is that 95% of the population benefits from counseling, and 5% actually go out and get it. I worked in middle schools, I worked in high schools, and I worked in elementaries. And what I can tell you is that we do have students that need additional support. And many times, unfortunately, they can slip through the cracks if we're not working together as a team. I can't take your child to counseling at night. You can't. And I think that piece is truly important. I know there's probably far more that can be talked about, but that is one thing that, if you want to know what you can do, is we can tie together as a team and make sure our children are completely supported. So that's what I would say. Anything else?
I would just add that, and I know I said once before, the kids are the experts, and I've got to 6-year-old who's in kindergarten, and he doesn't know all the right words on how to describe some of his friends, but I sure do. And I know by the way he describes them, I know exactly what's going on. And so, without anyone telling me anything too. I can tell you, I can think of 2 or 3 times in the last year and a half where I've gotten to look into things because somebody's mom or dad saw a kid's phone and it was on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever the cool app is that I have no idea how to use. And I get to go look into it and I get to figure out what's that piece. I now know more about so-and-so owning a BB gun and what that BB gun looks like, and I had no idea they made BB guns look like that. And I know more about what they've said about each other here and there and what's going on. I had no clue that I would assume the best. Some of these kids are really good kids. I had no idea that they own that stuff. And we go through that process and we investigate it, but the kids are the experts. They know more about the ins and the outs and what's going on with each other than a lot of people. So fostering those conversations, and when you hear those things, it makes you go, sharing it. I'm happy to look into it, and it might be nothing, or it could be something.
All right, one last question. We're way over time, so. Crescent Heights parents. So I just want to echo everybody else, thank you so much for being here tonight, and thank you for putting this together because I see all my questions on here, and now I realize there's a lot of things that we can do at our level, but what I ask of you, the district, is to empower us so that when we move forward, because obviously there's two ways forward, the way I see it, 2 ways forward. There's the district way forward and your site survey that you have to do, which is going to take some time, and then there's, the grassroots level, which is measures that we can take. So at least for Crescent Heights, I think I really like the magnet idea for the doors. I don't know if that's going to work physical security wise, but it seems like a short-term easy fix, something like that, or maybe some sort of a mechanism to bolt the door shut from the inside that we can do and fund. Obviously, it's not ideal that the PTA or parents fund it, but I think we're all willing to do it, and change is hard, and I think we all want the same thing here. But I just want to say that I appreciate that, but what we need from you guys is empowerment. So we just want to move forward. We all think that change needs to happen in some way for each school, it looks like to me. So I'm ready to do whatever we need to do to help make our kids more safe, and I think everybody wants to do that. I don't know when the site reviews are going to start, but it sounds like it's going to be soon, like within the next few months. But when that happens, I'd like to know. And then I understand that there's only 2 police officers that cover Northeast Tacoma. Unfortunately, we know that resources are strapped right now, but is there some agreement in place with Federal Way for their officers to respond in an emergency in this area?
So what it is with the 1 sector comprised, we do have 2 full-time officers that are out there full-time, so they can answer, and then we do have, well, it depends on the shift, but we do have officers that can respond from the 1 sector if they need to come up. But the 2, that's why they can pair up if they need to. I know that Federal Way does respond in an emergency, they assist us. It's sort of just an unwritten, I'd have to honestly check to see about an MOU, but I know they would respond in any kind of emergency they have before. So, and then we also, the community liaison officer does come up here, and Brandon Showalter, he assists me coming out too and helping with community issues that are out here. So,
I would say that over years we've seen evidence that pretty much everybody shows up. I mean, honestly, State Patrol, Fort Lewis. I mean, so in an emergency, there's all kinds of jurisdictions that come to our sites. So just want you to be aware of that.
That gets into the communication thing. You actually have so there's CTAC or TAC 30 up in the Seattle area. That's their tactical unit, and all the tactical units down here are combined. The Federal Way team trains the Tacoma team, trains the Lakeland team. Just knowing that and communicating that out to parents would make people feel a lot more comfortable about a tactical situation and the need of those resources to come.
That's fair. Yes.
Can I ask one last one? I can talk about it. I'm the counselor at Crescent Heights, and so I really appreciate what Josh said about the mental health. And I mean, that is our #1 key here. does the district have any plan to allocate, I like how I heard that you guys are allocating some funds towards safety. Are you guys have plans to allocate funds for mental health? We had a mental health therapist here last year. It was taken away from me. So as a counselor, I feel super stuck on how to help those kids that we know need help. And we know that getting to a nighttime appointment is hard, and maybe their family doesn't have a car or transportation. So as a counselor, I'm scared if we ever get to that point of the guilt I might feel of trying to help families, and I'm not supported by the district. So that's my question on I know it's a money thing. It all comes down to money. But are you guys working on any future partnerships on bringing more mental health into the building? Because as a full-time counselor, the amount of time that I actually get to work one-on-one with students is very slim of all the responsibilities on my plate. And that's just the sad reality of our job responsibilities nowadays. So that's my question.
So one of my other duties is I'm the supervisor of the crisis response team. I'm the guy that responds in buildings when we have death occur at our sites or some form of tragedy where we need to bring in additional resources and counselors. So I'm going to speak a little bit to that because it has been a topic so in the past couple of years we saw a surge in support provided to buildings and facilities in terms of family liaison and mental health therapists. We have an ongoing partnership with Comprehensive Life Resources. Used to be
It was taken away
Comprehensive
from us.
Health. So part of it is, so the other part of it is that there are also, so she was saying they've been taken away. I try to be careful with how I talk about resources because it's always if you get them, you feel great, and if you don't get them, you don't feel so hot, right? So, and that's why I'm sorry, I know that the district is working with multi-care to try to broaden the level of mental health support that we are providing at the sites. And she is correct in that there was a reallocation of Comprehensive Life Resource counselors. And in part, that occurred when there was a reassessment of how to fund schools by the legislature, which created some issues. I always have to be careful with what I say because I'm a district official. So I know that we're looking at greater levels of support for that. I know that Lieutenant Aguirre and I were just talking about that. The Tacoma Police Department also has mental health professionals that sometimes we utilize to help assess kids that might be suicidal or showing evidence of deep mental and emotional distress. So it is something that is being worked on in terms of expanding with our mental health partners and trying to get more services in the schools. So that's what I'll say at the minute. We don't have an immediate answer at the minute because she is correct. It's a resource issue. And I don't know, I can't, the person more specifically deals with comprehensive guidance and counseling that would have that answer. Dan, we can check with Laura now.
We've just been told no. I've asked, and it's a big issue. I mean, and even with where we're located, my resource list is across the water.
Yeah.
Families can't get there. They're closed by the time they can get over there, and we can't go to Federal Way because they're not Federal Way residents. We're strapped up here, but we know mental health is the basis of all this.
My son would be mortified if he knew I was saying this, but he needed help last year because of the suicide thing. And I was told by that counselor, who was referred to me by the school counselor, that I didn't love my child enough because I wouldn't take him out of school and leave my job 3 days a week to take him at noon. That's what I got.
And I'm sorry for that.
My school resource.
I can't speak to that, and I
But that
feel
was from
deeply.
my school resource. She was mortified that she
We'd be mortified.
referred me to that woman.
Yeah, that's not the kind of assistance that we want to provide any of our families, and especially not when you're talking something as serious as suicide ideation with young kids, much less any kid. So, I just wanted to at least semi-respond to that a little bit, but I know that it is something, and as Josh already pointed out, it is huge on our list of stuff, because we're seeing a lot of it throughout our district, and throughout our city.
Can I just touch on one thing that wasn't brought up tonight is, I know we're talking about locked doors and everything, but we have...
I guess we can go till 9 o'clock, sure.
we have a neighbor that's literally going to impact, I'm glad we have all the schools here, but it's going to impact all of the Tacoma schools in this area, and that's the LNG plant that's going to be in our backyard. If you look at any of the maps, it shows that all of our elementaries and our middle school will be affected if they had fallout there. Is the district looking at that and doing anything to basically prepare for this facility that is most likely going to be in our backyard?
So one of the areas, actually I can answer that question too, because we're working with the fire department in doing a shelter in place. So because you guys are located above the tide flats areas, how many of you guys were here for the big tire burning thing that occurred a few years ago? Those tires, they just burn like forever. That whole mess. So one of the things that we do look at up here, and what we're putting together is a biohazard response for what our schools would do in the case of any kind of biohazard, including anything that happens on the tide flats, anything that occurs with any of the container vessels that are out there, right? And so we have just like we have a liaison with the Tacoma Police Department, we have a liaison with the Tacoma Fire Department, and are actually looking at a shelter-in-place functional drill, which basically means, exactly pitching out a scenario where our schools would have to go into what we call shelter-in-place mode. The HVAC system is turned off, we seal all the cracks in the door. And so, we're always practicing general stuff of that nature. So the answer is yes. Are we good?
Well, I just wanted to, again, thank everybody for coming. I think it was a great conversation. Like I said, there's no perfect answers that we're going to land on in one night. So I would just encourage you to continue the conversation with your PTA representatives, with your teachers, and with your administration at your building, and with the district. That's what these guys are here for, is to support us and support our staff. So just really wanted to thank you guys. It's been a long night. You guys have really hung in there for over an hour.